Hi everybody, here I am for part 2 of my Monogram Stuka build. It's been a lot of fun and a lot of work, but hard work pays off every now and then with the models. So here we go, here's the Stuka. Not too bad at all. Okay, so what did I do since the last video? I attached my landing struts, my main wings, horizontal stabilizer, rudder, and this was a craft of alignment. Not so much with the main wing, that was a pretty tight fit, worked pretty well. However, with the Stuka, there's a lot of alignment things. Everything's got to be kind of straight, perpendicular. Landing struts, horizontal stabilizer. It's really key for them to look like where they're supposed to be. The struts weren't too bad. The hardest thing was attaching them and then hoping they don't do this. So I had to kind of watch it for a little while. What I did was I inside the root or the pin where it goes in, I used a little bit of a thicker glue. And then I wrapped it around with some liquid cement that was a bit thin. So that way it would be a quick dry, but the inside that would cure over 24 hours. So I'd give it a lot of support. And then I just followed it up with a little bit of Milliput and smoothed out the seam line with a wet cotton bud. So a little bit of a tilt off to this side, but nothing too big. The horizontal stabilizer was a pain. I found that one of my little bars here it didn't fit too well, and I didn't dry fit it until it was too late. I actually put a glue on it and it didn't work very well. It was irregularly shaped to go into the socket. So with the time, this is all timing, because once it was on, I had glue. It was like one. So luckily, though, I anticipated problems, so I used a slow setting glue. That way, I was able to manipulate the stabilizer while I fixed this bar, and everything turned out pretty well. So I'm happy with the results. And it's all together. I'm really happy. Alright, so that part's done. The big project was the wing walk. Because this was JU87 D5 that I'm trying to build. And the actual Monogram build is confusing because this was supposed to be a D3, but they didn't put the machine guns. If you look at it in your earlier Stukas, the machine gun ports was actually like a tube that was built right into the wing, and it was pretty pronounced. So it wasn't until they made the D5 that they came out with this different machine gun setting. And then the D3 had the black strips, which all your earlier Stuka all the way to the D3 had that. So the Monogram, they molded the D3 on, but they gave you the D5 barrels, so it was kind of like an awkward concept. So I was like, okay, I can't make it into a D3 because I can't scratch build that machine gun socket. It just wouldn't work. The easiest thing to do was to make strips and put it on the wing walk. There was a moment of anxiety as to whether or not it was going to work. I tried cutting styrene, but when you cut it at that thin of a size, it curls, and so that was a wash. So I just took some aluminum from an aluminum can. I would go get some wine bottles and the lead wrap that they put on the cork. However, the last 10 years or so, it's more like a paper, because every time I drop it, it doesn't have that tingy sound. So I stopped using that, and I just use aluminum from a can, cut it up. Just be careful if you're going to try that to watch out for your fingers. It is sharp. So the strips came out pretty well. I just sort of winged it. I just slapped them in. I was going to put these on prior to attaching the wing to the fuselage, but I was concerned about one of my wing roots needed to be filled with milliput. So I decided attach the wing, fill it, smooth it, put it on the wing walk. The only problem was that I couldn't really reach in there confidently, so I had to again come up with an idea, which I found from a magazine from it was a Fine Scale Modeler. One of the articles somewhere I read, somebody made these little masking tape handles. You take a strip, cut it, and basically you do something like that, and then all you do is pop it up. So I did that. I cut my strips, took some masking tape, made those little handles, and stuck them on. That way I was able to take my tweezers, hold the handle, super glue, and come in and drop it. And for the most part, it came out very pretty well. You know, again, it's going outside the comfort zone. And I've worked a little bit with photo etch and that kind of stuff, but you know, the little tiny stuff can be very tedious, and you're always afraid of too much super glue. So I always try to wick it with a little bit of tissue paper. That way it doesn't splatter everywhere. So it came out okay. So I did take some pictures so that you could get a little bit of a close-up as to what I tried to achieve. So check out these pictures. So there it was, and there it is. Soda can on a model. Model and a soda. I should have a soda in my hand. It came out okay. Okay indeed. What else? What else is going on here? The canopies. I've been tinkering with the canopies. Sadly, because the model is pretty old, it's let's see, 1983 to 93, 93 to 2003. It's over 20 years. The canopies, they got a little scratched and dirty in the box. They were loose. So upon fine looking on, and they're kind of rough. So I'm going to try to wash them up, polish them up a little bit, and do the best I can. For the most part, they still fit pretty well. I don't imagine masking going to be that difficult. I checked the cage, and they got some nice ridge lines, so masking should be relatively painless. And we'll get that on. I think what I'll do is I'll put the canopies on after painting, just because there's one piece that kind of needs a little TLC. So I'll do that once the painting's done. Painting. Here we go. So because I did do a tremendous amount of rescribing on this puppy, I learned a lot about sanding, more so than any model build I've ever done to date. And it's quite an evolution, because I started on the wings over a year ago, then the reverse, and then recently I worked on the fuselage and the horizontal stabilizer. And it's a journey, because you can see the earliest areas made a lot of slips, a lot of scratches, a lot of experimentation with sanding paper, different grits. And when you approach the fuselage area, oh, it's smooth, it's very clean. I ended with a lot of wet sanding. I've never wet sanded a day in my life, and I think when it's needed, it works very well. It's also a lot easier, less abrasive on the sanding surface. Very smooth. So my concern about paint is I may do some more buffing and sanding with some really like 1000 grit, even 3000 grit, just to smooth out as much scratches as I can, because I'm just afraid that when I put in my paint, it's gonna, in some areas, it may show up. I may tinker with, no, I'm not gonna do any putty to fill. Maybe one I might fill, because I notice I do have a few sinkholes, very subtle sinkholes I may fill. I'm not sure. So yeah, this is one area that's really severely scratched. Other than that, over here in my seam line of the wing, just a putty, I may go back and, again with 1000 grit, just really get that area smooth as much as possible. And then painting. What am I going to do? I think we're going to do a two-tone splinter camouflage on top, and then I'm going to have just your light blue on the bottom. Now it's going to be a lot of masking tape, but it'll be okay. I like the two-tone. The measurement I did last fall was three-toned. One of the things I do notice when I go to model shows, and when you have your models on display in your case or on the shelf, is that if you build a lot of like German or any aircraft, if you are using the same paints or the same camouflage scheme, every model begins to look alike, and the color is kind of like the same. So to add mix to the shelf, change up the color a little bit. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to use a NATO green with a dark green splinter camouflage, and that's just going to change the tone from my usual colors. It just adds variety to your display. Even the same with like armor. I've been noticing too. You're constantly using the same color. Change it up a bit. I think the different shades look really nice. Even when you go to a model show, there's a lot of subjects being watched. Just seeing all the different tones and shades. All drab. There's tons of shades. It's crazy, and you can use your own artistic license to change the shade, which like what I'm doing with this, and it comes out really nice. So I think that's about it. Will I make another update video on the painting? That's yet to be seen. If I do, I do, but I think maybe I'll just throw it in as the final reveal. Cause it's pretty much done. What would I do differently at this point? Not too much anything different. I think if I had more time, I probably would have drilled out this little area. I think it's a supercharger. There's a vent hole, and over where the exhaust manifolds are, there's actually two holes here. And I never bothered drilling them. When I thought about drilling them, it was too late. I wasn't too sure. I don't know how thick it is on the other side. That's probably something you want to do way early in your build. So I would have done that. And maybe I probably would have filled in the air intake on the reverse. I never bothered with that. So overall, it was a very good build. And I would build this model again. If I had the time. When you're building the older kits like this Monogram build, you gotta put a little bit of work into it. So maybe I might consider building a Hasegawa or who else builds Stukas? I'm sure Dragon is approaching. They must have a Stuka out by now. I'd like to build probably an earlier build. And have it in a dive bombing position on a stick with the bomb coming out. That'd be nice. So this won't be the last Stuka. There'll be more Stukas coming out over the years to come. I wouldn't mind. Sometimes if you go to model shows, they do have a category of just collections. Usually there are 4 subjects of the same theme. So maybe 4 Stukas in various types. Have a night fighter. Have the ground attack one with the 3.7 centimeter gun, I think. than the early dive bomber. Those are pretty cool. So I hope you've enjoyed this little update. It gives you an idea of what I'm doing with my build, and I will see you again sometime here on YouTube. Take care and model on.